Good evening, folks, and welcome to the March 5th Ordinance Committee meeting. We'll open the meeting and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No adjustments to the agenda this evening, right, Marty? Public to speak on a non-agenda item. I suspect both in attendance are here for agenda items. Is that a correct assumption? Perfect. We'll review the minutes of the February 5th meeting. And I'd entertain a motion.
To approve.
Motion by Val,
Second.
second by Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Don't see any correspondence that, correct, Marty? All right. So continuing business, sign ordinance. So I believe Scott wanted to say something
Yeah.
before we jump into anything.
Right, before we jump into electronic, I just have one question. Help me out if I'm missing it here, but I did not, I was looking through our current proposal, that, not the electronic, but everything else. And as I looked through it, I did not see anything in there which explicitly prohibits internally illuminated signs. And what I'm concerned with, we may say, well, it talks about externally illuminated, you're gonna create sort of a, help me out, if I missed it, I'm happy to find out what, but I did not see it, so I'm wondering,
It's section 38-10-6.
is that ours?
Yes.
Yes.
Internally illuminated and signs containing visible moving parts are prohibited.
Okay, that's fine, I didn't see it. 38-10-6. 38-10-6.
Four.
Oh, there it is, okay.
It is kind of lumped in.
I
there with
was
another-
looking for it, but I didn't, it's right at the very end of that sentence.
Right.
Because I was concerned that if we didn't have it, we we're gonna have to add that in.
Right.
No,
It's
it's
already
existing
there.
language.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that we had overlooked.
No.
And that's kind of the whole reason I see it being here, is to evaluate whether that is something that the voters eventually want to maintain or change. Is that correct? So what?
Well, I think what we're supposed to do is create an acceptable one with internally illuminated signs in it and let the voters vote it up or down. That's how they would say whether or not they like it.
And it would be an all or nothing. So depending on how we structure it,
That's,
would be what it would.
We
go
would
to
create one
voters.
that included it and then they could vote it down. We'd still have what we had before.
that's why we split it up.
Short, yeah, so short of a vote to move forward with what we have and not address internally illuminated signs,
Right here.
we are at the point where we need to address internally illuminated.
That's why we're gathering.
Right.
Yes.
So my understanding or my intent is that we will move forward addressing them and making sure that we are comfortable with the language and restrictions or exemptions or whatever we put in it, that we're comfortable enough to present it as a good, solid document. And that we feel that there is teeth to it. So having said that.
May I ask one other question?
Yes.
Again, I'm just
No,
trying to
no.
think. Last time, if I remember correctly, we said we wanted this to go on its own, so we're gonna create another subsection for internal illuminated. So if that got voted down, we still had all of this in place.
Correct.
My concern is if we then create internal illuminated, will it now conflict with 310.6.4,
Yeah.
which has flashing signs, you know, I'm just
I
saying,
will get legal advice on how we can make that work.
right, because I would hate
So
to
that
have to,
if the one, if the first gets passed,
an obsolete, that's what I wanted to make sure happened. I didn't want to create a conflict where we've got this one, and now I've got two ordinances battling each other, and which one
Which
is
is
precedent.
generally why you don't do them this way. It is generally why you don't piecemeal them.
Yeah.
Because you end up with conflicting language if, depending on what gets voted up, what
Right.
gets voted down. But I understand that was the direction that we wanted to take this, was to set up a secondary section to consider this complete
And I'm
and
okay
create
with
the
it.
secondary section for the internal.
I just wanted to make sure legally we weren't creating
I
a
will
scenario where
definitely-
We will,
where we
No,
end
we
up
will.
with a,
I mean,
you know,
based on, depending on how it's voted through, we will be creating a conflict if.
Right.
If the
Well-
internally illuminated gets approved, and so does this as it stands, we've created a conflict and we'll have to go back and address it. Hence
Okay.
the typical problem with piecemeal.
Okay, so if we make a separate paragraph that says internally illuminated signs will be dealt with in a separate section, and that separate section doesn't exist, then are they not?
That's why Marty said she'd follow up with legal and figure out
see if there's
exactly
a
what
way,
ramifications and what
language
we're
we
setting
need.
ourselves up.
I mean, if we put language that says internal illuminated signs are prohibited unless allowed under another section, which will supersede this, so that it's already in there to
Yeah.
that language, something,
Yeah.
okay, but I just want to avoid that. Thank you, sorry, so that was my only concern, I just want to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for problems down the road.
No, valid points. Okay, so where we are is we were presented with the city of Blanconia, New Hampshire as a viable resource to go look at. Everybody had homework to give me feedback.
Yep.
Everybody has color this evening. I'm gonna keep
I-
track of who says what by your color. So whoever would like to approach first, whoever's ready to discuss the topic, feels like they've looked through the,
I did my homework.
I was gonna say, I see notes here, I see notes
I
here.
don't remember seeing this as an.
No, no,
Did you get an email?
Yeah, it did.
and I also had it printed and said that you could pick it up.
Yeah, because that's where mine came from.
That's interesting. I'm wondering if I didn't make it to that email again.
I didn't
I'm
see the
very
email
careful,
either.
making sure
I
that.
didn't see the email?
I will go back and make sure, but
I pulled it up again just before this meeting and
When
reprinted.
was it sent out?
the
Right
last
after.
meeting,
Right
right
after
after the
that.
Right
last
after
meeting,
last
the
one.
night of the last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, but it could have gotten lost in my mail box.
Okay, so what I hear is Val is ready.
Okay. So everything of the Laconia thing is just regular signs until you get to section 2235-60. That's the illumination sign, so that's where I'm talking.
Yeah, that's good.
And the stuff in A and B, we don't need that. The part that I highlighted that I think is good is the section C, because it says external illumination, and it says what it is, it's foot candles. But I went to our lighting thing, just because that should be consistent. We said 1,600 lumens.
Can you go and just tell me where we are?
He's
It's
looking
the
for
thing,
Laconia.
The Laconia,
Starting to see.
Page 6.
4, 5, 6 pages in,
yeah,
Okay.
235-60.
60,
Dash.
C.
C, we're talking about C.
Okay.
And so there, they say external illumination, they're talking about it, and their lights, they say, foot candles or whatever. We already have that in our lighting section, but it's not a bad thing to have.
I would
in the
just strike
sign
external
section.
illumination from this because we've already covered it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in the sign section,
Well, we've already got external illumination in the sign section.
but does it say, I don't think it says lumens or anything with it. And that's what I'm just saying, is it should, and if we should have it, it should be consistent with the lighting section, which is 1,600 lumens. So I'm just putting that in there, because we're talking about signs, external illumination, and then going on to internal illumination, we should just be consistent at 1,600 lumens. That's it. And that, yeah,
The 1,600 lumens actually needs to get corrected. That's more than what is allowed on the dark sky. It should be 1,000. But that's a different topic. I need to address a few extra things in the lighting ordinance that were not put in, it should have been put in,
well, I'm just saying
but
that
There should be
the 16
consistency.
the 1,600 is equivalent to a 100-watt light bulb. And that's also mentioned someplace else in the lighting section. And I don't think a 100-watt light bulb, not being directed upward, but just being shielded, should be too much to ask for a lighted sign. I mean, 100,000 lumens would be like 60 watts. I mean, really low, considering, I mean, a bulb is 60 watts here, and you're talking about a whole sign is 60 watts, it's not a whole lot of light. So anyway, we can talk about things, but I want consistency across things. And so anyway, what they have is they have even more than that. Because they said it should be 10,000 nits at day and 500 nits at night, and 500 nits is even more than 1,600, it's more like 1,800. So if we're gonna be consistent, it should be around 450 nits. So that's part two. And I don't know if we should even mention daytime illumination, because we're competing with the sun, so I don't think it should even be mentioned. I think we should only be talking about nighttime illumination between dusk and dawn. Continuing on. I like the number 4. This is, we're all in C now. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4 in C, and it says all electronic signs should be equipped with automatic dimming and all that stuff. That's really good to say that it has to be there up front. And I'm just a little confused because they talk about internal luminescence, but then they don't really address regular electronic signs. They just call it electronic message center. So it sounds like that's all they allow, but I don't know that because it doesn't really talk about regular other ones. It doesn't say they're prohibited, just so it doesn't even mention anything except electronic message center. So I'm really not clear on that. So the first part of D, it's all fine what they're talking about in electronic message centers. And then my question is, do we want to limit our electronic signs to that? Or, which is just words?
Yeah.
Or are they allowed to have some graphics? As you know, like paint a sign, it has some decoration around the edges. Are you not allowed to do that? You just want words on the background? I mean, that I think we have to specify that. We should be specifying that one way or the other. And then I like the thing where they say it shouldn't be bigger than, 32 square feet, which is what we have anyway. So, but it shouldn't be limited more than the electronic sign, than regular signs are. You should be allowed to have your sign one way or the other if we're going to allow it. It should not be additional signage necessarily.
Right.
And then as you go down that whole electronic, so pretty much this whole thing is fine. the software, the last one where it says it must show current factory brightness levels upon request, so you can just sort of look up what it's set at rather than having to measure it at night. And one thing I would like to add to it, other people can say no, but I think it should be very fine pixels because it makes it look less electronic and more like a painted sign. So pixels 8 millimeters or smaller, they make them 6 millimeters, and they're starting to make 3 millimeters, which are just like, they look like a painted sign. They're so fine, it's like a television screen. So I think we should add something about pixels. So I like all of D, pretty much mostly. I don't know about the 75% of the sign, that's sort of weird. Implies that there's more electronic sign, which they don't really say, so that was sort of, I didn't understand that. But the limiting it to the 32 square feet, which is what we have, is also. That's my comment. That's it.
Fantastic, that is some great feedback. And then
Yeah.
Scott, I see.
Yeah, I guess I'm mostly focused on D. Not that C wasn't there, but I was dealing with, my thought had been when we create this, my thinking was that we were thinking of EMCs, electronic message centers, as opposed to others. And so I would recommend, this is just me, as we start this section, we might put in the internal illuminated sign section, only applies EMCs, all others are prohibited. You put that right in your.
Right, it makes it clear.
Right at
This
the
isn't
very
clear.
beginning of your section, and the second point might be all other requirements for signs as found in, are applicable, so you don't have to then someone say, well, and then you go into, okay, electronic message center, if we're gonna use that term, we probably need to define it. I'm not sure we have a
I have a
definition,
definition right here.
but I'm saying, I don't know as we put it
No, we
in, so.
have
It is not in this
So we would either have to put it, someplace, we'd have to define that.
one, in the new section,
In the
so,
new section.
right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we need to be clear that essentially this section
It's separate,
is done.
Yes, right.
okay.
So anything we're talking about now would be in the new,
And that's,
Eliminated
I have
sign
no problem with
section,
that, but I just wanna make sure that we, again, so we would start with just a couple of things. This is what it applies to. All of these that are in this section also apply here, so that someone can't come along and say, and that way we don't have to repeat some of the sizing and all that, it's already covered. And all we're really dealing with is, the EMCs, and then we can start talking about what levels they should be at, and, those types of things. I think there's gonna be some discussion on that. Do we do it at 100? Nits, is it higher, is it low? I mean, I realize what Dark Skies is saying, that's what we're looking at, put it in there. With the understanding, and I've said this before, and I'm not opposed to this, but I think as we put this in, the general consensus I'm hearing is that there is interest in the community for essentially an EMC type of sign. And as long as the various businesses understand that if they purchase one of these electronic signs, they're going to be limited in what they can do with it. Our ordinance will limit them to just messages. And then it's gonna be the business's decision whether they want to expend however many $1,000s it is for a glorified electronic billboard. And that's fine. I'm just saying that's kind of where I see it's going. So I'm I would start that way. Start with just a couple of, basic pieces, and then start bringing in some definitions, and then say, okay, here's, I don't know as we need one under D, but certainly the animation or statics that we limit that, all the restrictions that we put in there, those need to be there,
Right, I
that
think it should be
language is
clear that, in the definition of the electronic, that no graphics are allowed, if you want to say that, because,
fine. Mhm.
yeah.
So that was my thought on it. I realize it's not, because then there are some things, like I said, Linda has suggested some things, and I think we need to take a look at those and compare them. And that's where we're gonna get into, okay, what actually gets into, what levels do we set? Do we do it at this one? Do we do it at this one? How does that work? So if that's what I would have to offer on this.
May I ask some point of
Please.
clarification? So going through this it's automatic dimming controls, I see, and then the electric messaging centers, all computer-based software. This is only if they so choose to have this, so they don't have to. They could do other lighting that isn't computer-based.
They can do whatever sign, they can do a regular.
Or lighting,
Fancy-
they can have lighted signs that aren't computer-based.
Oh, yes, I mean, that's.
Yeah,
But
that
not
they turn on,
But
turn
not
off,
internally
Not
illuminated.
internally,
not internally, it has to be this.
yeah.
This
So
would
then
be-
we are restricting people who are not computer-based or whatever, or have the funding to be able to do that,
Exactly.
Mhm.
which is kind of discriminatory, that if your company can't afford to do it, you can't have
Well, then
any
you have-
internal lighting.
Then you lower your standards, I think, that's the problem, and you end up with.
I'm just,
whatever
I'm
somebody-
internally-
I'm throwing out what people might be saying, I mean, that's
Right,
what
I
I would
hear
say,
you.
I mean, I can't afford to do it. I'm just saying, if I was a business in town, if I can't afford to do it, you're telling me I can't have any internal lighting signs.
I think you have to be committed to the cost of a
EMC.
permitted internally illuminated sign. You have to be committed to that cost to want this thing in the first place. So in order to, when those folks were here who were giving us the information about them and talking through all of the other,
Pieces.
all of the other ordinances that they had seen and everything, these ordinances can be really, really restrictive and require that you be able to report when asked what your lights are at and what everything. It really does come down to what we put in for parameters and restrictions.
Okay, so if someone has something now, and this gets voted in, they have to stop it.
No, because then nobody has an
No.
internally lit
Nobody
sign now.
has internally illuminated
No,
signs
there
now,
is-
they're
Well,
prohibited.
bowling
Sure.
alley,
They got a
Yeah.
variance.
I know, but they,
That's-
but
They
they
got a
would not
variance.
be,
That's the only
and
one.
they'd be grandfathered.
As long as they don't change it, if they change it, then they wouldn't be able to.
That's
We
the
should-
only one that's out there though, Nancy.
Well, I know, I'm just where I'm
I
going,
got you.
without pinning a business, okay, I'm just
Oh,
throwing that out there, okay, I'm
there
just.
is only one.
So,
Okay, the other. But that's.
So it's their choice, if they want one, they have to do this, unless they have a variance or something to, and is that going to be phrased? Like, they can get a variance therefore, or is that because, as you said, it's their grandfather, I mean, what if someone else?
Somewhere it
What if
says,
I'm just playing devil's advocate if someone brought this up.
right, but I mean, that somewhere in the current one, I don't know, I don't remember what we did in the new one, but the current thing says the only way you can get a variance on a sign is size. You can't get a variance on any other aspect.
Lighting or anything.
That's what the current thing
That's
says.
correct.
Current language indicates that, yes.
And it requires a special circumstance. It's not just a matter of, oh, my signs.
All variances
bigger.
require special circumstance, though, whether it be planning board level sign.
So Nancy, is your question, if this gets voted in, would the current internally illuminated signs need to be changed in order to, adhere to what gets voted in, is that?
No, I would, or is it, as Ethan said, they have a variance, so they're already,
I would
they've been
think,
accepted or
I don't
whatever.
know the
so-
answer,
It's grandfather.
Well,
unless we,
I
plug
do
it
know
in.
the answer in how it usually pertains to land use ordinances. So I know this is kind of a stretch and it's a land use ordinance. And typically they are not retroactive. They are effective from the date they are adopted, they're forward, and anything in place prior is existing.
Yeah.
right, that's what I.
And will be there, yeah.
Yes, and this applies to only signs that are created from this moment
Right,
on.
from the
And-
adoption forward.
And what I have seen in a couple other, not this one, but other ones, they say any changes to current signs, they're allowed to be, updated or painted or whatever, fixed, maintained, they're allowed to be maintained.
If you
But any-
replace it,
Any replacement or
Changes.
changes
Sorry.
have to be brought into compliance. So if
So-
like that one broke down, she couldn't just get a new one. Like,
So that is said somewhere?
it says it in other things. I don't think we say it anywhere, but I think we should say that.
Where's it?
Yeah,
Isn't that part of the variance language?
I
Right,
believe
should-
it's in, I think it's in, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a complete blank, Jim, on what the name of that chapter 38 is. I can remember the chapter. I believe it's somewhere in chapter 38 language and state law referencing variance language.
has to be brought into compliance if there are any.
Oh, well, here, 235-62, non-conforming signs. A sign lawfully installed prior to the adoption of this charter. Or if permit has been issued. Shall be deemed permitted non-conforming sign. Right. What's there?
Yeah, so if you wanted to include,
With that,
yeah,
You want to include-
the non-conforming sign section, is that what I'm hearing, Nan?
yes.
But should that go in the electronic or should that go back in? I hate to bring it back to this, but only because
That should just go back in the regular.
I think that
stuff.
should really go into the regular one because that is language that deals with any sign.
Right.
And that's kind of the overall governing. I hate to do that, but at the same time, I feel like that would be the right place to put it. As you can see here,
Right.
if the non-conforming
Yeah,
sign is removed, it shall be replaced on with a sign that is conforming to the provisions of this chapter.
Yeah, the whole thing,
And the
because
whole sign, the whole thing,
the whole
yeah.
thing, because it gets into if the sign needs to be replaced,
Right.
blah, 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 so, yeah.
Is that a motion?
I move there, therefore move.
Yes. I do.
All right, so a motion to move section 235-62, man, I really want to call that something else. Non-conforming signs to
Regular
edit
signs.
the sign ordinance.
Yes.
That motion was by Nancy, second by Val. Discussion.
Much as it pains me, I feel it needs to be there. I really don't want to go back, but it does need to be there. I think it's one of those things that we have to have some language to that effect, whether it is exactly this or whether it gets tweaked by the lawyers or something. I think there does have to be something there to that effect.
Madam Chair, we're
Yes, Deb.
adding that to the old section, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
And one thing that was in
So do we
Not-
vote on that?
this,
No, there's still discussion, sorry.
but in general, my pet peeve, town has an ugly sign that they put up, that's got big letters and it's orange and it's the worst of the worst kind of electronic signs. And I feel like whatever we pass here, the town should have to comply with like everybody else.
That is a highway sign,
It's
and it's
exempt.
And it's
DOT.
permitted.
Yeah, but they don't put up just speed limit stuff, they put up other stuff on.
High traffic areas, pedestrian crossings,
Parking.
high pedestrian areas, high parking,
Right.
that's still involved in.
Traffic control, that's why, it's because it's regulated by the state and DOT, it's not.
Notice
Still, they can
it
make
no
a pretty
longer
one.
is used for anything other than traffic control.
It can't be used for anything other than traffic.
That is all it is used for.
They put it up, they say, vote today.
Okay,
It no
so
longer is-
just to bring us back to, we do have a motion and a second on the table. So if we're done with that conversation, then we can move into the
Okay.
conversation about the pet peeve with this town sign.
Any other, will you repeat the motion, please?
Absolutely. Nancy made a motion to insert section 23562, non-conforming signs from the Lanconia draft into the original
Sign.
3810 signs. Somewhere in there, Marty, I'm sorry, wherever it makes the most sense. I'm not gonna tell you which section.
I will make it work.
And that was seconded by Val. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous, ma'am. Perfect, okay. Okay,
Can I ask, what were we calling this new internally illuminated signs? I mean, was it gonna be like
It's on a note.
3810.
Seven, I think.
I was
Okay.
gonna say 3810.7, I thought is what Marty
3810,
said, and I thought I saw it in a note.
And I'm not saying you didn't, I just.
Just like, yeah,
Okay, so
38, 10,
so it'll be 3810 so it'll be its own section, okay.
which may end up being 8 since we're adding the
Not
non-conforming.
conforming, but,
Right.
okay, so it'll be there. All right. Fine.
So I heard feedback from Scott, Val, Nancy, did you have any additional feedback? Carolyn, you didn't have the opportunity to review it yet, you said,
Alright,
correct?
One thing I am just picking up here, section D, which we are talking about,
Yes.
is, item 3, the minimum display time. And it states that all illumination elements on the face of static electronic changing sign shall remain at a fixed level of illumination for a period of not less than 5 minutes. So 5 minutes. So that gives an opportunity for a sign to be changed every 5 minutes, correct? The way I'm reading it?
Yes, I think so, and I think that's fair, I mean, that's not gonna disrupt traffic. They're long gone miles away by the time the sign changes.
I'm hearing concern. I'd
I'm-
like to,
I think it's pretty fast. I mean, every 5 minutes a changing sign, if you're working across the street or you're living across the street, that's an awful busy sign. 5 minutes. I think there could be a longer period of time. Personally, what do you guys think?
I think 5 minutes is actually a long time.
do we have?
This is not
Yeah,
less
see, I really
than,
wish,
this is not less than 5 minutes.
Right, so it's
So
gotta
it could be longer.
longer, yes,
But
but,
it could be 5 minutes in 1 second.
right, I mean, some, like at the builder supply, they just put one thing up until they change it next week, you know, like hiring now, and then they don't change it for a while.
Well, yeah, but you can't think about what has been and what.
No, I'm just saying that's an
What could
example.
be. I
But
mean, and
like the, I hate to say
It
it,
could
but the
be-
theater has multiple things going on, and it all can't fit on one sign. And if it's,
If
you
you,
can change every 5 minutes, if somebody's walking around downtown, you can see everything that's going on.
so I'm gonna do a little bit of an experiment. And I'm gonna hit start on a stopwatch, and I'm gonna let it go for 5 minutes while everybody talks. While we get it, and just so that we can get a good feel for what 5 minutes at least feels like. For how much communication can be done audibly.
right,
I
yeah.
mean, I realize visually it will be,
yeah, I say, as one who deals like in church, we change messages on we have a screen. And okay, now we're talking seconds, not minutes, because but somewhere on the order of a sign dwelling there, a message that you're changing, 10 to 12 seconds gives you time to read through it. Now, if you're talking 3 or 4 lines of text, 5 minutes should be, I think if you go much longer than that, it becomes, I don't know,
Sign.
yeah, it's just, I mean, it's at that point here, so I think 5 is probably a good balance. As Val said, it's not distracting when you're driving through, it's not flashing at you every minute or every 2 minutes, that's, and most of these are going to be this is something we can talk about, though, they're gonna be in businesses in that district, so as opposed to being in a residential district, so it's not like I mean, yes, I would be able to see the theater, just use my own example, sign from my house, but then I've got the bank light that shines in my living room, just the way it's set up, so I just pull the curtains, it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. When my father-in-law lived with us, he used to look at the theater and say, the barn door's open, because he, dementia, but it was like, it was kind of like, so, yeah, there'll always be, that, but I think 5 is probably a reasonable compromise, but I understand that if it was right next to your bedroom and it was changing every 5 minutes,
I
that
just
could be
think it's a
annoying.
lot of activity going on. I don't know, just my own opinion.
But it's only gonna happen during the day and when the business is open, correct?
Yeah.
it goes off at night.
But you're going to see it, no matter what, I mean, it's gonna change.
Not if the business closes, the
And
sign
someone
powers
could
down.
take advantage of the fact that it's every 5 minutes and have, okay, something for sale. And then 5 minutes later, something else is for sale, or here's a property, or here's a hamburger, or here's whatever, a pizza slice, or special of the day. And it's a lot of activity. I think we worked really hard and long and have spent a lot of money and effort in this town to make ourselves somewhat of a Mayberry town. And I think that activity going on, just my own self, seems to deter from that experience.
If we say that it has to change as fast as possible, so this is like sliding on, so there's not movement associated, you know, how they do that in what PowerPoints, it comes on.
It has
So
to
it just
be
has to just change.
Instant change.
Instant change, no sliding, no morphing or anything. And then if we're restricted to letters, light letters on a dark background, let's be that, don't be more restrictive than that, but light letters on a dark background, people are gonna put as much in that as they can. I don't think you're gonna see it, feel it change, because it's gonna be the same amount of illumination, the words are gonna change, so if you're looking at it, you're not even gonna notice it changing. Because it's gonna be the same amount of letters, it's just, I don't think
You're
you'll
not
see it.
changing the background, so you're not
No.
getting a visual to your eye. There's a
You just
difference
change
in
the letters.
illumination.
So what you're saying, Val, is
So
like if it was a
won't give
running
up the flashing
thing, like
of
a
it.
ticker
It won't
tape.
give up.
It is gonna be moving.
I would
That's what I'm
rather
saying.
see, I
It's
mean,
not
we're
going
going
to be-
down
that's
the
what I'm
road.
saying. It'll just be
One
It'll just
side,
say,
if you're
you know,
allowed, it's
dog,
not,
cat,
I mean, I
Yeah,
think
fair.
that's.
yes, and
I
next
think
time it'll
that's a
say,
Okay, so
different
sorry,
times.
ladies. No, that's okay. Carolyn, go ahead.
I just think if you're allowed to do this, let's say you're gonna say, nuts and bolts for sale, or the Diva Show, or whatever it is you might do. I don't think that you need all that activity. I think that if you decide one day, maybe every day you can change it. But I think, I don't think it needs to change it every 5 minutes. That's what I'm saying.
just talking for the theater, we can have 5 things going on in one day. So we
You're gonna
can't,
have a big space up there to be able to put.
not
that
when you put up the
information.
big letters that people can see from the street, you are gonna be
You're
much
lying.
more up there than what's up there now.
About 3 lines. is
You
what
3
you're
to
gonna
4
do.
lines, that's all you get.
How many things going on at the theater?
You can have drama camp, you can have a movie, you can have a concert, you can have auditions, all
Usually
going on
not
the
at
same day.
time. Well,
Carolyn, what time limit, time frame seems comfortable to you? Like 10, 15, 20?
I would think that's even too long, too short. I don't know, I'd like to have some feedback from other people, but
I'll make a comment if I can.
Yeah, go right ahead, Jim.
So you probably run, you see a lot of signs that, as you said, they're about 7 or 8 seconds and they're changing. So they're trying to get your attention,
Right.
and so they're gonna read it and they can push out their message. I think Laconia did a really nice job of just trying to make this
That's been
no
5 minutes.
static, no,
Sorry.
right.
no flashing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the 5 minutes is a really long time, so if I'm Rangeley Health and Wellness, and I want to say something about soccer camp out there, or
Whatever it is.
sign.
Yeah, yeah.
But 5 minutes is a long time, and you know, we also have the physical therapy program, the children in action program. You
We have a
know,
lot.
helping adults. There's a lot of and so same with the theater, same with, you know, another nonprofit. Just 5 minutes to me is a really long time, and we can't get our messages across adequately to those driving by, and that's okay, because I don't want to see a flashing sign. You know, look at, you see that sometimes the time signs and the temperature signs, how quickly they flash, they go back and forth, right? We don't want that.
Right.
Okay. So I think 5 minutes is my opinion, it's a pretty long time.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in state statute Title 23, it does have in here, the display on each side of a changeable sign may be changed no more than once every 20 minutes, unless the municipality has an ordinance.
Allows for this.
Right, and
So-
it does say, the next thing says, must change as rapidly as technology practicable, with no phasing, rolling, scrolling, flashing, or blending.
So that's state ordinance.
But
That's state
everybody's
law.
breaking it.
But again,
Yeah,
you can be more restrictive, you can't be less restrictive.
Right,
okay, then we can't go less than 20 minutes,
No,
correct?
no, it says you could be less if you're at the town of Islip. No,
But-
but that line, that
Yeah.
sentence said 20 minutes, it could be less if the town, if.
Oh, more restricted, I see.
and that was
Could
title
also be-
23, I'm so sorry,
Title
Ryan.
23, subsection 114-11A.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is 114-11A.
Would it be possible to get I don't want to put more work on my apologies, but maybe a rough draft of, what we've been talking about, here's the section, here's the definition, say electronic message center, here's section C, whatever, just that we don't have something that we're working with as ours and not
Yes,
pulling.
yes, I
things.
can have it for the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be helpful, for me, it would be helpful, so instead of pulling from, I can then start striking in our own, pulling in other language, instead of playing with it.
So-
in my head.
I would ask for a motion, what you want. Do you know what I mean? A motion,
Yeah,
are
yeah,
we
yeah.
talking from 235-60 on? Obviously, up until non-conforming, which we're not putting in this section.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, motion that we just take 235-60
Add definition,
at C.
At C, yeah, let's start with C.
okay, so at C,
At C,
C and D.
and then down through D, and then striking number 1D,
Well, knowing that we'll have to change it anyway.
because we already did
because
that, yeah,
We're gonna have to make changes to it,
but then we'll have
Okay.
that to work on.
so for right now, what I'm hearing is a motion to take section 235-60 of the Lanconia, New Hampshire, C through D5, include
the definition
Definitions.
of any definitions of EMC or whatever we need.
and to bring that back as a draft option.
Yes.
Who motioned that?
I'll-
He did.
I'll make the motion.
He
Just-
did, I'll
I wanna
second.
see this in writing because I need to.
Motion from Scott, second from Val.
As a draft.
As a
Yes,
draft, just a draft
absolutely,
to
as
give
a
us
draft.
something to interact with instead of,
Highlight, drop, cut and paste.
exactly.
Right.
So we have something to start.
Is that a clear enough? Thank you so much, Marty. I just want to make sure that we communicated it. Any other discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. So, Linda,
Yeah, show and tell.
I just wanted to ask, I noticed that you mentioned something before the meeting, show and tell.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued.
Okay, I had asked the woman that I'm working with at Dark Sky how to show you what 100 nits
Okay,
looks like.
Thank you.
Okay,
That would be-
Fantastic.
And this is what I brought back. So that's pretty bright, actually, in a dark, with a dark
Okay, with the dark background,
background.
okay, so that's
100
that's
nits.
on the back of that truck.
That's
like
on the
nighttime
back.
It's on the
day.
side of
Okay,
the
so I'll
truck,
tell what I'm looking at.
in the
Okay,
dark.
in the dark, 100 nits.
That's what it,
Can
that's,
100.
Can we just turn off the light here? Just, I
Sure.
wanna,
Jim.
that way we could, and
Yeah.
then we could see how
Actually, 100
visible
nits
it
isn't
is.
bad.
Could you?
no, I mean,
And
Okay,
that's
so now this is a dark night, we can
Yeah.
actually,
You can see it.
You can see it, it's good.
well, that's, you
Did I
know,
see that? Linda?
It's
approximately.
not in your face.
Right, and you
And
can
then
see
you
it a
can-
lot better if it had dark background, so the light.
and that's when it will be on,
Right,
you know?
yeah.
So I,
100 nits isn't bad, okay,
that's,
that makes me feel
That
better.
is helpful.
It is very
Yeah.
helpful.
And the 100 nits was
Dark
Is-
sky.
in
the
there,
dark sky
the luminance levels for
Mhm.
operation between.
Right.
Yes.
And that's
So-
what we might pull that in and
So the
replace the
100
Laconia light.
nits is
See how that-
1,000 lumens, or wasn't?
No, that's,
100 nits
is
is,
about 40 or 50 lumens, if I remember correctly.
no, that's
Yes.
like a watt, no, it's not that many.
Yes,
Way more
it
lumens.
is. Oh, it's watts, I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's like a 40-watt light bulb,
So,
which is about 600 lumens or something like that, or something in that ballpark. That was helpful. Linda.
That was
Thank
very helpful, Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
you. 'Cause that's been the issue, is how bright it is.
Yeah, right,
We don't know.
and that's what I asked her, so how can I demonstrate
Mhm.
what
You know,
100 nits looks like?
I'm sorry. Are we discussing the notion that, internally electronic signs would be shut off after business hours or at a certain time, or is it after business hours and during non-business hours, or is it a time of day? Is it-
That will be determined by motion.
I think it
vote,
currently
whatever.
says 10 o'clock or
Yeah.
close of business,
Yep.
whichever is later. So if the business
Right.
has if the business has a
Open.
special event that goes till 11, they're gonna allow them to keep the sign on, but normally it would
And if
have
the
to be.
business is 24 hours, 24/7, then it doesn't go up.
Right, but we don't have any 24.
I don't know
The
if it's-
hotel? I mean,
No, that's security lighting, they aren't really open.
I'm just
Yes.
saying if they were to have one.
that's a good point, but I think that's what our
It's a
current,
very valid point, Nancy.
that's what our current ordinance says, I believe, is it says it,
Think so.
you know.
So that's language that we can certainly,
I'm confused, because you said, that's 100 nits, which is fine, and I liked it. But you had previously said, when we talked about 1,600 lumens, because that's what's in the sign, you said it had to go down to 1,000 lumens. But 1,000 lumens is not 100 nits, so now I'm confused.
Well, I swear, nits, lumens,
I
and everything else, I'm not quite sure what, what is.
And when we made the sign thing,
Okay.
it was supposed to be equivalent, good for the dark sky, so now why did they change it?
Is visible, like light bulbs.
Yes,
Nits really applies to screens.
that's correct.
So I don't know, there's clearly, there's some sort of relationship, but maybe not
Oh,
direct.
I've got it here.
They need
But
me a calculator.
I got it right here.
What's that?
I've got it right here.
Okay,
100 nits is 342 lumens.
Right, but you're
three
saying,
hundred and forty-two lumens.
342 lumens is
Yeah.
100 nits,
which is
which
nothing,
is about a
and
40
you said it was
watt.
1,000, so that's like 3 times more.
A
So it's
1,000
like I'm
lumens is
confused.
almost 300 nits.
Okay,
Yeah,
the 1,000 lumens is in reference to the standard lighting ordinance for outside lighting, which needs to be shielded and shouldn't be more than 1,000 lumens,
okay,
fully shielded. So, well, anything over that needs to be fully shielded. So that's something that is in the current
that's
lighting
in the lighting
ordinance.
ordinance.
I don't know, has the,
but the lighting ordinance currently has
Select board.
1,600, that's why I'm.
said anything?
I have not been elected for anything
Okay,
other than
all right.
what I'm doing right now.
I went before the select board, I don't know, December, I think. And asked them, I need to have some amendments to the lighting ordinance as it stands. Now, the one that was voted in July, a year and a half ago. Because the lumens is incorrect, needs to be down to 1,000. 1,600 is pretty bright.
Well, I'm not
Sure.
debating that, did
Yeah.
they change when we made?
No, it hasn't changed,
Because we picked those numbers because that's what you.
because at
recommended.
the time, that's what it's a really long story, but I got bad
Okay.
information.
Okay, okay, so it's always been what you're.
It's always been
Okay.
1,000 lumens,
Okay.
and unfortunately, the person I spoke with,
Give you faulty.
Give you-
gave me
Okay,
bad information. There's also pieces missing from the lighting ordinance that has to do with public lighting and, street lights and that sort of thing. Fortunately, we're okay with
Okay.
street lights, because everything is, there's nothing exposed in terms of the bulbs. So there's pieces that have to get added
okay,
to that, and the select board said, yes, I can go ahead and do that, but apparently they haven't sent down any directions, because it has to go through you guys.
okay,
Now, what I propose to do is basically take that lighting ordinance, add, much like I did here, add what needs to be in there. And that one change for the lumens.
Okay,
and you guys can look it over and see if you're okay with
okay, I understand
Of
that.
course, it's,
amending that.
in all fairness, right now, most of the lumens and watts and all that comparisons are done on incandescent bulbs, and with LED bulbs, that all changes, because an LED bulb, the whole purpose of it is you get more lumens for less watts, because that's what they're saving. So, you know, you no longer can you make those comparisons. You have to say, we're talking about a 40-watt incandescent bulb or a 60-watt incandescent bulb, because the LED bulbs, you get a 40-watt LED bulb and it can give you many, many more lumens, because of the way the energy works.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it.
But that's why they think they focus on lumens rather than.
Yes, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that for comparison purposes, most people think in terms of watts when I'm buying a light bulb, I'm buying this wattage bulb.
Right. But we understand that, yes, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so we do still have all of the information that Linda has previously provided, so that we can make sure we kind of do this,
I think
keep track of all that information as we start.
once we
editing
get
the additional-
draft, we can start
Yep.
pulling it in.
Okay.
So thank you for that. Jim, did you have any other feedback tonight? I don't know.
Linda, I sent Joe an email asking him if the board of selectmen has directed us and just, we haven't gotten the memo.
Perfect. Perfect. Any other additional comments or anything on the continuing business? Okay, new business, we don't have any. We gotta talk about our next meeting dates first,
Oh,
Val.
Excuse me. So when we get a little further down the road, we're gonna have to somehow coordinate, or the impact that the sign ordinance, if we're proposing, internally lit signs, will have on the lighting, section of our code. Is that
Well, that's why I wanted to be consistent.
right?
And Linda indicated, I'm sorry, Linda indicated, you. Linda indicated that she had brought that information to the board,
Yes.
and we are awaiting directive to take on that section as well.
Oh, I
So,
see.
Yeah.
I see.
Probably if we work on the sign ordinance, if we, and please don't, if we say, yes, we're gonna move towards dark skies, we make that compliant, then we'll have to deal with the other, instead of trying to make the two agree, in which case you might have
Okay,
both of them
right.
compliant, so.
Correct.
Let's start with the one we're on, and if we have to go
Okay,
back and
Correct.
address it, we'll address it, but
We
it's
will.
one at a time.
Correct. All right, so next meeting, possible dates.
March 19th, the third.
March 19th, yep, would put us on our third Wednesday regular schedule, or April 2nd. March 19th.
April 2nd, the March 19th is good. I'm here.
Yeah, 19th works.
I'll be here April 2nd, but I won't be here in the middle of April.
Well, the 16th, I'd rather not, that's,
I was gonna say, you're gonna start getting closer to,
well, in April is when I'm talking,
Yeah.
so this month is fine, 19th is good.
so 19th works for everybody? Fantastic.
I won't be here, but that's okay.
Do you have any additional feedback or anything though?
Yes.
Email it to Marty. She'll get it in front of us.
Well, speaking of emails from Marty, I did get that email, Marty, I'm sorry. I didn't find it.
It's
I
okay.
did too, I found it too, but I hadn't opened, I didn't see it.
Okay,
Sitting here,
Marty.
open, I was like.
In your inbox.
Just because it
Yeah,
didn't go to
well,
spam, I mean, you
One
know.
time I leave Carolyn off of an email, she's never gonna let me live it.
That's not true.
That's not.
Motion we
Uh,
adjourn?
Please, please, that was a motion by Scott, second by Val, all those in favor. That is unanimous. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.